traditional not to greet anyone on Tisha B'Av, so I won't welcome everyone here. This is the day, I never know quite how to say this. It's the day of National Jewish Mourning, or it's the National Day of Jewish Mourning, or it's the day that has both collected throughout Jewish history all of the worst moments of our memory, but also the worst moments of our grandparents' memories, and of their memories, and of their grandparents, and all the way back. It's been like a magnet for these things. And so here at CRC, it's become a custom. I think Rabbi Susan started this. She had the idea that the only way that we really feel it on Tisha B'Av is when it's personal, right? It's hard to come together and genuinely cry and mourn for the destruction of the Second Temple, as so many Tisha B'Av services have been. I don't know if anyone ever encountered this or has heard these stories. There's all sorts of stories of campers at sleepaway camps. I don't think they do this anymore. Did this, you know what I'm gonna say? And they would spend the whole summer, usually out of popsicle sticks, building models of the Second Temple. And then on Tisha B'Av, they would burn the children's models. It was so traumatic that like now it's a story rather than a thing. But the point being that it's hard to feel that emotional resonance sometimes with things so far away. There was a discussion just about a decade after the Holocaust, in the 60s, in the early to mid-60s, about whether Tisha B'Av would become Holocaust Memorial Day too, or whether these would be separate things. They ended up being separate things, but I think there's an idea there that's important, which is that we have this emotional resonance with the Holocaust, and yet we can imagine 1,000 years from now, God willing, there are still folks telling this story who would have that same distance to the Holocaust that we have to something like the destruction of the temples or the pogroms even, the Inquisition. So we tell all these stories tonight, and we tie it in, as Rabbi Susan taught us, with our own personal story. So we'll sing songs. We will read a little bit of Eicha, of the Book of Lamentations, the book that's traditionally read on this evening. But really what we'll do is we'll invite anyone who feels comfortable in between each of these to come up and light a yahrzeit candle and to share your story, to share who you're thinking of, to share something of them with the rest of us. And for this evening too, for this Tisha B'Av, I want to invite us also, if it feels right to you, to share losses from this last year and a half, right? It hasn't just been the people that we have lost, and God knows there have been too many people that we have lost, but there's been so much loss that we have experienced as individuals. And I just want to make sure we have space to share that as well. So we'll start, we'll ask Andrew to play Eli Eli, if you don't mind. This poem, set to music by Hannah Senish. Please.
Eli, Eli, Shelo yigamer le'olam, Achov v'hayam, rishush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam, hachov v'hayam, rishush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, God, Adonai. I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayers of our hearts, the sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayers of our hearts.
If there's anyone who feels comfortable, who feels ready to share, to start our sharing, we invite you to come up and light a candle. Thanks, Paul.
In the past year and a half. And one of them was very close to my wife, was a cousin, who his last 3 or 4 months of life had a debilitating cancer, and she went there to take care of him, but never in his life during the pain and everything, he never complained. They had fun, they talked, they laughed, he had a nice family. I was so fortunate, not this February, but the February before this, when the pandemic just started, I happened to go to Washington, Seattle, to visit with him. And I came back and I told Liz, honey, you have to come home. It's just terrible out there. And she came home 3 weeks, about 2 weeks later, and then he passed away within 2 weeks. So kind of regret that, but we lost him. And then we lost my first cousin. And we were close growing up. I remember coming to St. Louis, and it was funny. Come to St. Louis from New York, and that's when Andrew, you'll probably remember it, when the Beatles were getting hot back in '68. No, I'm just kidding. But when I came here, it was the Beatles craze. I had long hair at the time, wore the bell-bottoms, the Beatles shoes. I come to Parkway Central, and what are they wearing? Crew cuts, suntan pants, and penny loafers. So I said to my parents, I'm going shopping. My cousin gave me my clothes. What did he do? He went the next day and wore my clothes back to school. And then there was my daughter's future father-in-law who passed away this year because of COVID. And it was just, I know he had other illnesses. However, what a wonderful man. He made a great life for other people after he overcame a lot of obstacles. And so Stephen Kuhn was super. There was Byron, my wife's cousin, and my cousin Vern. And I miss them all.
Thank you, Paul. Whenever anyone's ready to share, they should feel comfortable to come up. Yeah, Leslie.
Thank you, Raphael.
waving at Bob.
My best friend, Morris Passer, died this past year. I met him 73 years ago at the University of Michigan. We were in the same fraternity, and we also were waiters in the fraternity house. And we soon discovered that we enjoyed singing. He had a beautiful tenor voice and was a charter member of the Niagara Falls chapter of the SPEB-SQSA, the Society for the Preservation and Encouragement of Barbershop Quartet Singing in America. And he had a vast array of barbershop. We soon discovered that another one of the waiters had a wonderful baritone, and I sang bass, and we must have sung Coney Island Baby 300 times over the campus. Interesting situation. He had a terrible stutter during college, but then got a good job and married a wonderful woman who was very active at Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, Pat Passer, on the Board of Admissions, et cetera. And the stutter disappeared. We saw each other on a regular basis. He came to every important function of my life, my 50th wedding anniversary, my second bar mitzvah, Alberta's memorial service. We vacationed together. We spent a good deal of time. I miss him greatly. He was just a good, gentle friend. Developed Alzheimer's about 3 years ago, which went its inexorable course. And he died in the spring. And he was a very good friend, and I miss him greatly.
I'm not really sure what to say. I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks. Would you please use the microphone? I didn't think it was working. You have to hold it up, you have to kind of kiss it, but it's working. Kiss it. Kind of.
Is this really working?
Yes.
Okay. I lost my mother on November 6th, and I lost my father on December 6th. My mom to cancer, which was unfortunately expected, and my father to COVID, which was completely unexpected. I thought about their similarities and their differences, and through going through albums that my mom put together of their courtship, I came to find out that my father was completely smitten with my mother, so much so that he accompanied her to the library and actually did studying in college so that he could be with her. And he came from a family where no one said, "I love you." There was love shown, but it was never said. And my mom came from the opposite. And I think that the marriage of both of them was I want to say the best of both worlds, but I think my mom just made my dad's world better. And I can't go on from there except for 56 years of everything. But they gave me a love of travel, a love of them, of family, and doing the right thing, no matter how hard it might be. And there's nothing that you can do except remember. And so that's where I am.
I have a feeling my voice will carry enough without this thing. Is it okay if I light one over here? Okay. Brighten it up.
They will.
Sure. I'm Bob Gershon. And my mother, Shirley Reisman Gershon. Oh, heck.
Autumn just came out and asked that everybody use the microphone
Because
so the
for those
people
who
at
are
home
listening,
can watch
right,
and hear.
you know I can't hit two of these in a row.
It's CRC.
Nice.
All right. Anyway, my mother, Shirley Reisman Gershon, died at the stroke of midnight on October 23rd, 2020. She was 93. She was alone in her room with my wife, Robin. Just two introverts in a room, and I think she was comfortable to go then. She'd been in hospice for 9 weeks, and it upset her greatly that it took that long, because she swore that the doctors had told her it would be 7 to 10 days after she was released from the hospital. She wanted to know why it was taking so long, and she was actually pretty testy about it. But it's mainly because my mom was, she was a hard case, and she was fiercely competitive and smart, and she was a mahjong. She played mahjong for blood, and she was also very protective, kind of like the ultimate mama bear. And she used to say that if I don't care what you do to me, but if you mess with my kids, we're going to have a problem. And that even manifested itself when I was playing in an alumni hockey game at age 55, and carried the puck across the blue line and got bumped by one of the defensemen on the other team. And my family later reported that my mother, then 88 years old, sitting in the stands, yelled out, "Hey, don't hit my kid!" She was fierce.
First, I'll talk about my dad. I just lost my dad 5 weeks ago. He was such a character. I'll tell you a funny story. I read it. So there's so many. Once my brother and my dad was a lawyer, got tickets on the on-ramp of 270 going in the 90s. And when I heard about it, I said, "Dad, were you really speeding on the on-ramp of 270 going 90 miles an hour?" He said, "We weren't speeding, we were racing." There's another really good one, actually. There's some very strict judge that my dad played handball every single solitary day for lunch. He said he was going to court and told the secretary to hold his calls. And he came back from his handball, and he kept some fresh clothes in the closet, but all he had was a turtleneck and slacks, and he had to go appear in front of some judge who was very strict. Oh, I forgot this. He had to appear in somebody who ran a very tight ship, the court. And when my dad approached the bench, he said, "Eddie, you know you have to wear a tie in my courtroom." And my dad said, "But Judge, how would a tie look with this turtleneck?" So that was my dad. And also, I'll tell you, my dad's mitzvah, for sure, he had plenty, but he visited people. When my uncle was housebound for 3 years, my dad went every single solitary day. Of course, it was on the way to the J, so it was perfect. And on and on. There was never a weekend I don't remember my dad going to a nursing home or hospital to visit someone. And he just really did that. So first I'll light this candle for my dad. And my dad squeezed every drop out of his life that he could, and he got to live a full life. And then there's my husband, Jack. Who passed 6 months ago. And I don't know, I don't think I can come up with a story, but I'll tell you that just a little past where Steve is standing is where Jack blocked my way and started our relationship. And then Friday night for services, our first date, we sat right around here. The next Friday night, our second date, we sat right around here. The next Friday night, our third date, we sat around here. And then it was Oy Vey Cafe, and we didn't come. We went out to dinner instead. And then every day since. And I hope that you got to know Jack if you're lucky. He's really extraordinary. I don't think I can talk.
I'm here. I'm Tali, Jack's daughter. Yes, Tali, sorry, hi. Like this? Okay. And actually, I have to light candles twice also because I lost my sister in the spring of last year. Aaliyah Light, and she had a lot of challenges in life, but she had such a pure heart and such a good soul, and she died during a time where it was so scary and lonely for all of us, and she really didn't get memorialized in a way that she deserved, but she was loved by a lot of people, and I'm here. My brothers Tora and Matt would be here if they could to talk about this as well. But my dad Jack, I don't know. I'm assuming many of you knew him, and trying to come up with something that I could say a memory is really hard because I think about him every moment of every day. He was my rock and my compass and just everything to me. But my brothers, who are much more articulate, and I'm just going to share what they wanted to share because I can't think straight right now. My brother Tora said, "Please share the memory of his enthusiasm for conversation, warm embrace, and in the spirit of him saying, 'Tell me one more thing,' because you could tell him a wonderful thing about, he always wanted to know what's going on in your life, and you could talk his ear off and he'd say, 'Tell me one more thing.' And then he said also his boisterous laughter when faced with a challenging situation, which is also something he would, if something really hard, he's the person you go to talk about anything really hard. And he had this way of laughing, just such a big laugh, sort of like, what are we going to do? What are you going to do? And he'd help work that out. And Matt was remembering that he always he taught all of us to look out for the little guys, literally and figuratively. And he says, I think that actually the kids' bathroom here at CRC was one of his ideas to make sure that everyone was included. He always rooted for the underdog. And I guess I want to say that my dad was also one of the best grandpas anyone could ever ask for. My boys, I was thinking today about how anytime, like whenever he said goodbye to his grandsons and his granddaughters, he would say, can I have a kiss on the elbow? And then kiss on the other elbow and kiss on the forehead. And so I say that to my boys now, and they know exactly who I'm remembering. So yeah, thank you.
By the waters of Babylon, laid our lives down, laid our lives down. We sat and cried by the waters of Babylon. We sang no sacred song, sang no sacred song. Our tongues were tied. Whoa, diddy-day, oh, oh, diddy-day, oh, yeah-da-da, oh, oh. If I forget you, Jerusalem, I'll play no more again. I'll play no more again. Not one more time. Whoa, diddy-day, whoa. By the waters of Babylon, we laid our lives down. We laid our lives down for a long, long time. Whoa, diddy-day, whoa, whoa, diddy-day, whoa, yeah-da-da, whoa.
I'm remembering my father, Martin Wexler, who died on November 8th of last year. He lived a good full life, but it was hard because he lived in New York and I was not able to see him at all that last year because of COVID. In fact, I was planning to go on March 15th of 2020 and had to cancel. He grew up real poor. His mom died when he was 11, and his father and stepmother abandoned him and his brother, so he was actually raised by an aunt after that. And so I think he always knew how important it was to tell people that he loved them, his family members, his kids and grandkids. You know, he really cherished all of us. He was very overprotective of me. I was the girl and the baby, so that was a constant battle we played. But he also had a kind of a funny sense of humor. He fought in World War II and was very, very proud of that. And he told stories about that many, many times. His friend Georgie Patton, who was his general, and he actually liberated Dachau. And he told a funny story that he went to the VA, and they were making him wait, and he finally went up to the desk and said, "You know, you shouldn't make me wait this long. If it weren't for me, we'd all be speaking German." So, but anyway, he had a very long life. I'm happy I had him as long as I did. But, you know, as people said with COVID, it was hard, and I know that he didn't die of COVID, but he was in assisted living, and it was just real hard that he was not able to see anybody. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to remember him here.
Pull some light over that way. Here. Is this? Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I will. Here, let me. Okay. So Leslie's reminding me that I need to introduce myself. Okay, I'm Sharon Pollock, and this year, like you, I lost both of my parents. And so I'll be lighting 2 candles, attempting to light 2 candles here, and tell you something about them. My parents' names, their names as well, Erwin and Marcille Pollock, and they died just short of their 72nd anniversary. So they were together for an awfully long time. And my dad had rheumatic fever as a child, and so he really worked very hard because he was told that he would have a truncated life, and he would probably die in his 50s. But as it happened, he ended up dying when he was 95. So he was a psychophysicist. And so actually I was thinking about it with Susan as I was talking through my mask, and she couldn't hear what I was saying. And so at our memorial service at the Shiva, one of his graduate students said something about how back in the early 50s, he did a study and could measure how much sound that people were hearing when they could see somebody talk versus when, you know, they were covered and you were only hearing the sound. And so anyway, he worked first as a civilian for the Air Force and then as an academic at the University of Michigan. And while he was working really very, very hard, my mom was taking care of all of us. And she just a very generous and amazing individual, and taking care of him as well. And then in 1997, shortly after my dad retired, my mom ended up with a disease called transverse myelitis, which is kind of like MS, and it's a neuro immune disorder. And so it got progressively, she had various episodes. And so whereas my mom took care of my dad for the bulk of the life at the early part, my dad took care of my mom later on. And he was a very diligent caregiver until he no longer could do all of it. And so they had a wonderful relationship, and because of his work, and they would travel, go all over, the world, and I think that was part of the reason why my mom never took a regular sort of job. She did a lot of volunteer work and substitute teaching, that sort of thing, but she kind of left herself open to be able to accompany him wherever he went. Like you were talking about, as Jack is a great-grandfather, oh, my kids adore my folks. My dad would call up, and he's, Ann Arbor calling, and, talk to them, and he just relished that role. They both did. Anyway, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jill Hollifield, and my mom, Gail Hollifield, just died on April 28th. She was a very patient person. She worked in special education in middle schools, so she had to be. And about 4 years ago, she moved to Maine to be with her siblings. And shortly thereafter, had to move into a memory care unit because she had Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia, which is an ugly, ugly thing. In June of 2020, she went into hospice, and at that point, I reconciled myself to not seeing her again. But she hung on, and she hung on, and on April 27th, I flew into Maine, finally fully vaccinated and everything. We went straight from the airport, talked to her. She was lucid. She knew who I was. She knew I was there, which was not a given at that point. And I told her I would be there at 10 o'clock the next morning to see her. And when I got there at 10 o'clock, the hospice nurse was waiting for me and said, she is dying. This is it. So she did have a moment of consciousness that afternoon. I said, I love you. She said, I love you too. And then she was getting very agitated, and I said, Mom, it's okay, just, don't worry about it. She was playing with her blanket. She said, oh, shut up, Jill. And I was like, thanks, Mom. So I was able to sing to her, and at 6:30 the next morning, she died. And so I think that probably one of the greatest gifts that she gave me was waiting for me and letting me be there with her. And I miss her. She was a good mom.
So mine's a little different story. Pardon me? Oh, excuse me. Harriet Barron. Had to think. It's the anniversary of my father's death 70 years ago when I was a youngster. And your stories resonate so with me. I think they don't go away, and the warmth in your telling just brings back so many memories for me too. And my father was a Dane who took a boat from Copenhagen and met some people on the boat who introduced him to my mother in Toledo, Ohio, and from that relationship became my sister and I. And when he passed away, we moved to Toledo, Ohio from New York and were raised by my mom and her 3 sisters. So you can just imagine being raised by 4 argumentative women. There are all kinds of stories. But I came years ago, I think, when Leslie told a story about the loss of her brother, and I thought that we walk by one another in CRC and we visit, but it's this night where you hear so many hearts opening and so many stories, and it means so much. So thank you for sharing. And I pass it to Rita.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you, Harriet. I'm Rhea Olbaum, and this is. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. I'm Rhea Olbaum, and thank you, Sharon, for lighting a candle. This is for my sister-in-law, Ann Erkey, who was Stuart's only sister. Stuart was my husband, for those who don't know, and he passed away in 2007. Ann and I were always very close, so close, in part because Stuart's family was so difficult that we formed this great bond, and it meant so much to us. And in the years, of course, since Stuart died, we became even closer. She lived in Vancouver, so when she called me in 2019 to say she had advanced ovarian cancer, it was one of those things where I couldn't believe it. It still seems inconceivable to me that she died at age 72, that Stuart died at age 56, and that his parents, God bless them, lived long, healthy lives into their mid-90s. And, you know, it's just sort of a crapshoot and a reminder to take each day with as fully and with blessings, and we just never know. But Ann was very special. She was extremely smart in all ways. She was a judge, well respected, and was wise on and off the bench. She truly was. I miss her terribly. I miss that connection to Stuart and his family through her. Surprisingly and very lovely, I've talked to her husband probably 3 times a week. In fact, he called on the way here just to chat. And I think before Ann passed away, most of our phone conversations was like waiting for Ann. You know, oh, Ann just came in, or Ann's out of the bathroom, or whatever, and then he'd hand the phone over, or, you know, the real conversation would begin, so to speak. But since then, we've had a lot of, quote, real conversations. And so I'm grateful for that and grateful for Ann, and miss her. Thank you. As does everybody who's mourning those people who are gone and carry with them with us in our hearts.
I'll light the candle after I speak. I'm Harold Kletnick, and I'm here to remember my brother Jonathan, who died on December 6th of COVID. I think I've got like 2 little vignettes about my brother I'd like to mention. One's kind of humorous. My brother was an athlete and a life insurance agent. And at his funeral, before the funeral, we spoke to the rabbi there in Chicago who did the eulogy, and everybody in the family mentioned a couple of things about some of the quirky things about my brother. One was he remained in superior physical shape all his life, and he died at 70. And he left behind a wife and 2 sons and 4 grandchildren. The vignette that both his sons wanted the rabbi to remember was how my brother would mow the lawn, which was in the summer on the hottest possible day. He would wear a heavy shirt and cleats, and he'd use a push mower. And he did that to stay in shape. And it was like a remembrance from when he was a wrestler as an athlete. And that was something he picked up when he was in high school, when you'd have to make the weight class. So that was a way to aerate the lawn and stay in shape. And there was another little vignette about my brother I wanted to remember was, he later told me this when when we were both in college. And he was in an Illinois State high school wrestling contest. And this was the state championship, and he was in the round of 16. So he didn't make it to the finals, but in the round of 16, he wrestled someone who later gained celebrity/infamy. And that person, when he wrestled him, his name was Lawrence Tiro. And you may know him under his stage name, Mr. T. My brother lost to Mr. T in overtime. So, it was on points. So I just thought I'd mention that. My brother was a very matter-of-fact and laconic person. And I remember sharing all kinds of stories with him. It was such a shock to me that COVID took him, because he was in way better shape than I'd ever been in, and he still was in great shape. And both his sons, who are now, one's in his late 30s, the other's in his 40s, they both marveled at, how he kept up his physical shape. He took care of his wife, who had some physical problems. I've been very sad about losing him ever since then, and I just wanted to share that. I'm gonna do it the other way. I've done it this way plenty of times. Let's see if I can get this thing relit. Thank you.
So I'm Rachel Thamangu. I'm remembering my mom. She would have wanted her whole name said, so her Hebrew name. Chana Leah Alta Bat Bendit. And I was just thinking when even looking ahead at this service, I brought my mom here. We're not long after she moved here to St. Louis to remember my dad. He passed about 3 years ago, and she never stopped mourning him. And I remember at the service, I remember thinking that she was going on a little too long. She liked to talk about him, and it was so important to her that everybody knew that she loved him and that he loved her. My mom met my dad when she was 18, or no, she was 16. She got married at 18. She had 5 kids. I'm the youngest, so I got away with things that my siblings never did, and they still remind me. But my mom was, she was one of the strongest and smartest people that I know, and she was very insecure about that. You know, we always would tell her she always pursued some kind of education. She would take memory tests. She would tell anyone who would listen about her scores and how, you know, she was actually pretty smart. I think maybe because she never went to traditional college. She had wanted to be a nurse, and she didn't because she got married and had kids. And she had MS. She was diagnosed about a year before I was born, when she was 33, and she lived with it for 60 years. She died in December of COVID. She fought MS. She fought to the end. I mean, I was so fortunate that I was able, even before vaccination, she was at St. Luke's, which is a smaller hospital, and they let me in with the PPE and fully decked out. None of my siblings could travel in. So she was in a skilled nursing facility, an assisted living, sorry. She had just moved. She was looking forward to so much. And she got sick, and she got the COVID. She had no symptoms for about a week, and we thought, oh, she's going to lick this. She's licked everything. You know, she kept going, so she's going to keep going. And she went in the hospital, and for a few days it felt like she would. It felt like she would be okay, and then all of a sudden she just got terribly sick. And I went there, and when I saw her, you know, it was pretty clear that she wasn't going to make it. But she was on the oxygen. She wasn't on a ventilator yet. And I got all my siblings on the phone in the room with her, and everybody was able to talk to her. We'd done some video calls, and those did not go very well. She couldn't see the screen well, and it was good for everybody to see her, but it was tough. But she heard what everybody had to say. And in the end, she had to make the choice that day to either go on the ventilator or to not, and to let go. And I remember asking her, you know, the nurse and the counselors and everybody were talking to me and saying, you know, it's probably not worth it. She's let her go. And I looked at her and I said, what do you want to do, Mom? What do you know, and she was lucid to the very end. And she said, I want to fight. And she did. And she was on the ventilator for about a day, and then her body just gave out. But it was so important. Patrick and I were able to go and be with her at the end, and we had the funeral in Chicago, and so my siblings and I came, and it's just, I don't know. I honestly don't know where I'm going with all this right now, but it was just it was hard. We did virtual Shiva, and it all felt kind of surreal. It's only been lately that it really feels like she's not just there, because for the year before she went, she was right up the road from us, not even 5 minutes away, and we really couldn't go see her. We did a few things like through the door when the weather was warm. But she lived a great life. She did. She lived a really good life. She was so proud of her kids, 5 kids, 8 grandkids, no great grandkids. She waited, but none of that yet. And I know that she's with my dad, and, you know, like I said, she never quite got over that loss. And so just thinking of her today and of that time. So thanks.
My name is Steve Hochberg. My son Alex died 2 months ago. He had a complicated life, and his physical life was really short, but I think he knew that he had limited time, and he had a pretty full emotional life. He left behind 2 kids and a beautiful wife. We just miss him. Sorry.
My name is David Hitt. My wife is Roberta Ray Hitt. Our children wrote a great obituary about her. Fortunately, during COVID, she passed away peacefully, and we were there together to the end. And she was a great light. She achieved so many different goals, but most importantly for our children, she gave them stability. She gave them love, and she was a funny person, a joy, a wit. She did the crossword puzzles in ink, New York Times. I would have the dictionary and a thesaurus, and I couldn't get a word. She was just a bright light to all that was around her and who knew her, and she was a municipal court judge, so everyone loved and feared her. I think the most important thing, she brought joy. And I think joy to everyone around her. She was funny, witty, and in a way that she would find some humor or the right words to tell everybody. And that was, you know, and you couldn't outsmart her. I mean, no matter how smart you thought you were, I mean, it wasn't there. So. And like I said, she died peacefully. We went in for one thing. Another thing happened while we were in the hospital, and they said, you know, her time had come. And then she just said, you know, it's time. I'm just going to go to sleep now. And that was it. I got a lot of texts and things from other judges calling and saying, you know, how they missed her and everything else. But it was just like for children just coming in and cleaning the house. I still had the lawnmower and the snow shovel in the front door. I was prepared for anything because I wasn't going downstairs, you know. So it's just, and she never complained about anything, no doctor's appointments, no anything, ever. And she was just a joy to me and and to a lot of other people. And she will be missed.
So we connect these personal stories. Thank you for sharing, those who have shared. We'll keep, we're not, don't worry, yeah. We connect these personal stories with the national story, with the Jewish mourning story. And so we'll read a few words from Eicha, from the Book of Lamentations. The traditional words we read on Tisha B'Av that remember the earliest destructions that we think about today, the destruction of the first temple society, the enslavement of our people. We think about the destruction of the second temple society 2,000 years ago, the moment that spread Jews throughout the world. And so we chant some of these ancient words with an ancient melody. Eicha yashva v'dahad hayir rabati im hayta kalmana rabati v'goyim sarati v'amdonot hayta lamas b'cho tivke b'layla v'dimata lecheya in la menechem mikol haveha koreha bagduvaha hayula leoivi galta Yehuda meoni umehero ivoda hi yashva v'goyim lo mitzah manoach kol rodfeha hiskuha ben hamsari.
Hi, I'm Jason Barton. I see some familiar faces. I want to thank Sharon and Jill. I wasn't even aware of this as a concept, but I hope I'm not revealing anyone's anonymity. On the grief group today, they were talking about preparing for tonight, and so I welcome the opportunity to. My mom, Linda Barton, and died on August 4th, I think 2018, in 2019. And approximately a year before that, my oldest and closest friend, Josh Cohn, died of a opiate overdose. And our lives were the family's lives were very entwined. Pat and Bill Cohn lived in Skinker to Bolivar. Bill was an artist and a professor at WashU, Bill Cohn. And my mom and Pat Cohn, Josh's mom, knew each other before each of us were born. And my mom, I grew up on Westminster in the late 60s, 70s, when people were not, well, I think, yeah. And my mom also was on the ground floor, kind of with Susan, and some other people, Stuart and Susan Halpern, and Roger and Stephanie and other people. My mom was kind of involved. In fact, when she got remarried in 1984, Susan wasn't here yet. It was Bruce Diamond, who was a visiting rabbi from Kansas City, that preceded Susan. And yeah, it's been quite challenging. Last couple years have been difficult to say the least. I think Jill and Sharon were talking about the ritual nature of this, that I think Jamie Sentnor, who was leading the group, talked about. She said something that seemed very apt. Now I can't remember what it was. Yeah, my mom was a very amazing person. And so was Josh, just both of them very, just amazing people. And I remember my cousin David once said when we were at a cemetery for his parents, there's a Shakespearean quote about, this person we shall not see. Maybe it's Hamlet, I don't know. We shall not see this type of person again, right? Something along those lines that, every person is so idiosyncratic, so unique, and just, what is it, ineffable? I can't even describe. I just can't transmute who they were, but yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And
I'm going to sit. My name is Judith Shaw, and I am a CRC member, although I don't come very often. But when Vicki pointed out to me this evening's this circle, I said, I'm in. Jack was a dear friend of mine, and there isn't anything I wouldn't do for him because there wasn't anything Jack wouldn't do for me. And I have been close to Vicki and to Tali as they're grieving the loss of Jack, which seems insurmountable for me as a friend as well. But I think I'm learning from them a lot about grief and loss and life and death. And my mother's 98, and she's still alive. But I definitely feel during COVID, she doesn't live here, she lives in Connecticut, but I've just gained so much insight from how Vicki and her family and Jack in his dying moved through this process of life, and it's really serving me as well as I anticipate the loss of my mom. And it's really nice to have this community here to share, which has taken me by surprise tonight. So thank you. I feel really lucky to have been a friend of Jack's. Wow.
My name is Susanna. My grandma died in March of this year from COVID, and so I wasn't able to see her. My mom was able to see her, which was really lucky because she hadn't been able to see her for a long time before that, but she was able to see her like the day before she passed away, and was able to tell her that we all loved her. And it's been really hard not to be able to be with my family and my extended family and grieve for her yet.
Thank you.
Well, I realize I'm here for 4 people. I'm Susan Spiegel. Thank you. And like you, I mean, I think of Jack every day. Jack's loss is just enormous, and it overshadows the other losses that I feel. And I just wanted to add one thing about Jack. He was someone who made everyone feel like they were his best friend everywhere in the world. I mean, we traveled in other parts of the world, and people would be just circling around Jack because he just had so much love that he was showing. And at his 70th birthday party, everyone was speaking about how they were his best friend. And, and we all went, okay. So I think about him every day. I mean, it's just, he's just, as they said, just such a special person. The technical reason I'm here is my sister-in-law died this year. And I wish that my husband were here for his sister, but it's not his thing. And she's someone who we never really got very close, but I always felt like we would have been good friends if we somehow had made the effort. She was from New Jersey, and their family was large, and I came from a very small family that was quiet. Everyone in my family was quiet. And she was the loudest and the most boisterous, and it was very difficult for me to have those interactions. But her heart was, she just had an amazing heart. She had so much love for her family. And unfortunately, I think after her husband died, they had a very difficult relationship. She just withdrew, and she kind of cut everyone off. And she just went downhill. I never thought she would live as long as she did. She was obese for many, many years. She smoked. But she lived to 79, which really, it's young, but it's older than I thought she would make it. So I also lost another good friend this year, Dan Sokol, who is a member of CRC. And like my husband, Stuart, Rosalind doesn't like spiritual things like I do, she said. I tried to get her to come tonight.